Keough here from College Aid Pro. And today what we're going to do is we are going to do a walkthrough of the CSS profile. Yeah, I know this is probably everybody's most exciting time of their year, but I will try and walk you through this. So hopefully it'll take away some of the stress and the uncertainty around it. One thing I want to tell people that have already been in the CSS profile, if you're going in there, excuse me, to submit it for a child that's already in college, you're going to notice that it's a bit different this year. A lot of the questions are the same, but it is a bit different. So just a little heads up on that. So basically, what you're going to want to have handy when you're doing this is information about your primary home that you live in. You're going to want to have information about your assets, and then you're going to want to have your 2021 tax return and W-2s. And if your child submitted a tax return for 2021, you're going to want to have all of that handy as you work through the form. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to get onto the CSS profile homepage. Okay, so if you go to cssprofile.collegeaid.collegeboard.org, you will be on that page. I'm going to turn off my video here. Okay, so once you're in here, you're going to click your for the fall 23, spring 2024 school year. So at this point, you're going to log in. If you've been in this before and you go to log in, you're going to have to convert it to an email address. So if you don't have an account, you just click down here, create account, go through that process. I'm not going to walk you through that process. But from here, you're going to want to log in. So I will go ahead and log into my sample CSS profile. Okay, so now I am logged into my sample family, and this is basically your dashboard. So what's going to happen at the beginning of this is that you're going to be asked some questions about your family, name, address, and your marital status. And the way you answer some of those questions will actually produce different questions than your neighbor might have. Because if you're divorced, there's going to be certain sections that are specific to you that a divorced family might not see. So there's a little bit of skip logic in here, but a lot of the sections are going to be exactly the same. So this is your dashboard. Your child will be assigned the CV FinAid ID at some point. It says the academic year you're submitting for. As you plug in schools, which is part of that introductory part, they're all going to show up here. You can always add more schools before submitting. At the end of this process, you're going to be asked to pay. This form is not free like the FAFSA. So there's a $9 registration fee, and each school is $16. So if you go to plug in a school and you're getting an error message or it's not doing anything, that's because that school doesn't require the CSS profile. So you will not be able to submit it to schools that don't accept it. It'll just block you. And then if you are a divorced family, which my sample one is, you will see this because you're going to want to provide the email address of the non-custodial parent. So one parent, very similar to the FAFSA, the custodial parent, the parent where the child has spent the most time in a year look back from when you submitted the form, that's the parent that's submitting this one. But the non-custodial parent has to submit a non-custodial CSS profile. So that's why they're asking for contact info. So you want to make sure you share that, because without that information, most schools aren't going to award their endowment money, and you don't want to lose out on any funds. So once you're on this dashboard, you can click into continue application. Now I've gone through my application. So a lot of these sections say that they're complete, right? You can always go back, as you can see here, and you can edit any answers. So I am not going to go through every section because I don't want to bore you to tears here. But I'm going to start with the parent income section, and then I'm going to take it all the way through. Most of this information before that is pretty self-explanatory, but I will tell you, if a question is not required, and we're going to see this over and over again when we get into the form, our advice is don't provide the information. They can always ask for it later. less is more. You want to be honest, but you don't need to answer questions that aren't marked as required. And you'll see, it'll say required right next to it. And in a lot of the places, if you don't put a 0 even, it'll give you a little error message before you move on to the next page. So you see the getting started, parental relationships, residence, academic information, parent details. These pieces are pretty straightforward. I want to hit the ones that tend to be more confusing and where people have questions or typically make mistakes. So let's go into the parent income section first. We're just going to click through. They're just telling you you're going to need tax returns. This is the same stuff that they're going to ask for the student. So I'm not going to take you through, well, we'll see. I might take you through the student one, but just to keep in mind that the same questions are going to be asked, just like on the FAFSA. So just pick whatever's applicable and continue. You see, these are all required questions, so you need to complete them. This family filed a 1040. What's the filing status? And some of this stuff you're going to remember this from the FAFSA. Okay, so now they're saying you're going to need your tax return. They're asking for the adjusted gross income. Take it right off the line. Now here they're saying, did you file a Schedule 1? This is not a required question, so don't answer it. The minute you click yes or no, all you can do is toggle between them. So don't hit no and then say, oops, it's supposed to be yes. Just, it's not required, so don't answer it, right? If you push it and think you push no, but you can release no, you can't do that. So just keep that in mind. So it's not required. I'm going to move on. Now it starts asking for specific questions off the tax return. Line 1 is required. Fill it in. All these other questions are not required, so you can skip ahead. These are all right off the tax return. None of these questions are required, so you just can scroll through these. Makes your life a little easier. And when you finish submitting the CSS profile, all these colleges and universities are going to reach out to you, and they're going to ask for your tax returns and your W-2s. So you are not hiding anything from these colleges. They are going to be able to see your tax return and see all this information. Okay, this question, it is required. So put in line 22 from your taxes. Check all that apply, not required. We're just going to click through here. Okay, this one, you got to pay attention. This one is required. So this is mom, what did she earn from work? And these drop downs will give you really good information. So if you're not sure, click there. This is typically the number off of the W-2. Again, very similar to the FAFSA. And then you notice these questions are required. So you need to fill them in. Tax deferred pension and retirement savings plans. They tell you exactly where to grab this information. Okay. So read your little helpful hints, plug it in. Same thing with if you have a health savings account. If you have an FSA for dependents or for medical, that's required. Now we're moving through. We're in the parent income and benefit detail. So it just starts moving you through the different sections. If you are receiving alimony, this family's divorced, plug that in there. Parent income and details. Again, income from other members of the household. That's a required question. If you received any income or anything was paid on your behalf, you disclose it. Housing, food, other allowances, money given to them or paid on their behalf. So just if it's not applicable to you, put 0 and move on. If you're not sure, read the little caret. Those are all required questions. This typically happens if you got somebody living with you and is in a recurring way contributing. I find this in families where maybe parents are low income and they're living with the parents are living with the grandparents of the student, and so they're paying some of their bills, that kind of thing. That's what they're asking about there. Other untaxed income, workman's comp, untaxed liability, because you want to realize with this financial aid form, they might want to know a lot of stuff that's not taxable on your 1040, but they might want to know about it and plug it in. So you want to read the drop down and make sure you're filling in anything that's applicable to your family. Might not have any of it applicable. This is Peg's parents. We're on the parent piece here. So this is asking about 2022. And you might be thinking, why are they asking this? Because this is all about 2021, and you're exactly right. So these are required questions, so you have to answer them. The main takeaway here is do not overestimate. If you have a steady Eddie job and you make a certain amount every year, go ahead and put it here, whatever that is. But if you're in sales and it can really jump up and down, you want to put the minimum. I might make this, but the minimum I'm going to make is this. That's what you want to put down here. Do not, again, be honest, but do not overestimate anything that they ask here. Okay. Untaxed income and benefits. That's going to be like if you're saving for retirement, next year you're going to save 10,000 in your 401k, then put it down. But if you're not sure, and if things are tight and you might not save, you might pull that back, then put 0. Be honest and don't overestimate on all the questions that ask for future amounts. And that goes for the student as well, because they're going to ask a lot of those questions for the student, what they're going to make this summer, what are they going to make during the school year. If you don't know, put 0, unless your child has a job offer and you know exactly what they're going to make. At this point, they're saying, was their income significantly impacted? This is not a required question, and we recommend, and when I say we, I'm talking about College Aid Pro, you leave these not required questions blank, because you will go back to the college, you will be in the driver's seat, and you will share this stuff with the college. Instead of sharing it on here, we want you to share it when you want to and the way you want to, okay? This one is required. So do the parents expect significant income change? So you got to be honest, yes or no, right? That one's a required question. Enter the amount parents expect to receive in 2023. Again, now we're jumping to the next year. Put the minimum amount, don't overestimate. Same concept again. It is required, so you got to answer it. Then they're asking if any of these are applicable to you. If any of these are and you click them, you will actually get a message that says, hey, good news, your fees for the CSS profile will be waived, which is nice. That $9 registration fee and $16 per school will be waived. Also, if your adjusted gross income is $100,000 or lower, on that question, you will get a message that says that your fees are waived for the CSS. So that's a really nice thing. The AGI being 100,000 or lower, that's a change. And I think that's great. That's great for families. It's a nice little help. So now we're going to move on to parent employment info. This question is not required, so just keep moving, right? Part of the armed forces, you got to say yes or no. That's required. Are you a dislocated worker? Not required. What's your occupation? None of these questions are required. Then they ask different things about retirement. This is not a required question, so don't click anything, but you're going to see here the next question you get, this is required. And this is a change from previous years, and because it's required, you've got to put something down. So this is asking your retirement account balances. They do not, or they should not include this in a calculation. So they shouldn't be asking it, and this is a change this year, but they are. So do not overestimate, put the value down, okay? Now we're moving into additional parent info. Because this is a divorced family that I put in, this is all required, and you want them to be able to reach out to the non-custodial parent, as I said earlier. So fill all that in, and then they ask about year of separation. Put that in. This is required, but it says in the information, if you don't know an answer, put unknown. You probably, if you're divorced, you're probably listening and saying, well, I know what my ex does. I would put unknown, because your ex is going to submit a non-custodial profile, and let that person answer it. For all you know, they got a promotion or the title changed. My advice is just put unknown. Let them answer their information for themselves. It just causes less friction, honestly. And here too, another required question. What will the non-custodial parent contribute? I wouldn't touch this one. I would put 0, right? If you have a written agreement that specifies it, This is required. You have to say yes or no, right? You have to answer that question. But I would give the minimum information on that, and I would put 0. They're again asking for the non-custodial parent email. This is not required, but you want them to be able to get a hold of the non-custodial parent so that they can complete the full application. Both profiles come to College Board separately, so there's privacy. Now we're moving on to housing information. Let's just scroll through here. This is a lot of name and address stuff, so we don't need to spend a lot of time here if it's required. You do need to say if you own your home, if you rent. So the questions will be slightly different. For this family, I'll just say own. So realize if you rent, your questions might be a little different. And then these are required questions. When did you purchase your home? What did you purchase it for? What's your market value? You do not want to overestimate the value of your home. This is like the quick sale, the lowest reasonable market value of your home. And typically you can take off 15 or 20%. It's called the IRS quick value. You're not going to realize all that money. You're going to pay realtors. You're going to pay different taxes and closing fees. So you can pull that off of your market value, and then you want to put your current balance in the mortgage, your mortgages, your liabilities. Okay, that's all required. This one's not required. Then they ask for your monthly housing payment. A lot of people make an error here, and it says it very clearly. What they want is your principal and interest only. So do not include your property taxes and your homeowner's insurance. If you have it escrowed and all combined, you want to pull that out, and that'll show up on your statement from your lender. Okay, so this goes into household summary where you're going to share about dependents. In the interest of time, I'm not going to go through household summary. I think it's pretty straightforward. If you are a divorced family, they're going to ask some questions about child support. You won't even see that if you're not divorced. So now I want to pop into parent expenses, and we'll finish the last few sections that tend to have a bit more confusion around them. So again, they're asking if you have medical or dental expenses. Leave that blank. If you click something, you can't get off it. Like I said earlier, you're going to share this if you have significant medical or dental expenses, but you're going to share it in an appeal, basically. Same thing here. This isn't required, so I would leave it blank. Now we're getting into parent assets. So if you've done the FAFSA, this is going to seem a little familiar. Checking and savings, that's required. The value as of today when you're submitting the form. And then they say, what other investments do you have? So if you have any of these, because these are all required questions, mark yes or no, whatever's applicable. And I marked yes on these two, just so that I can show you the questions. So this question, I have never had a family ever. It used to ask for a value, and now it's a yes or no question. They have a little explanation here like they do throughout the form, but it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. What they're basically saying is if a parent has taken their money and put it in the name of a sibling, not the student you're doing the form for, then you should mark yes. I haven't come across a parent that's done that. If you gift money to your child, that's not the same thing. And 529s are not that, right? A 529 will be disclosed in another part of this form. So we're going to have no for that one. Current market value of your investments. And if you're wondering, what do they mean by that? They're going to give you an example. One of the biggest mistakes people make, and it's very understandable, is 529 balances for 529s that the parent owns, the custodial parent if you're divorced, or either parent if you're not divorced. That gets included in this question. Any 529 that parent owns, even for other kids in the household, that gets included. But if grandma has a 529, or if the non-custodial parent has a 529, that does not get included here. So required question for investments. That's how that works. They ask, I said, we have real estate, how many properties? So you put the number. They start asking for details on the property, but they don't require it. So just move through. It's easy to get through that. They asked you if you had a business, and that was required. And I said, yes, but now here they say number of businesses. This question isn't required. So I'm just going to leave it. Okay. Now we're moving on. You see here, we've moved out of parent and we're moving on to student income. And just a sidebar to the parent business, you're not hiding anything. As I said earlier, they are going to ask for your tax return. So if you have an S Corp, you file an 1120S, you're going to be providing that to the colleges. So they are going to see it, they are going to know it, they're going to see your 1040, they're going to see that income flowing in. So you're not doing anything shifty and trying to hide or lie. You're just answering the questions that are required. So again, here we are with the student. These are going to look familiar. Very similar questions. Student completed the tax return. What sort of return? What's their filing status? A lot of the same stuff that you saw on the parent. What's the adjusted gross income? You got to provide these two. It's required right off the tax return. So easy. None of these questions are required. So you just click right through them. And honestly, most kids probably don't have them anyways. Then how much did the student make from work? So this is the wages. This is kind of like wages. So if they didn't have a W-2 job, but they babysat or whatever, you can put that in here. Now we're moving to additional student income. So if they had any need-based work programs, that's applicable, but this is not required. So you can leave all of this stuff blank because none of it's required here. Now we get to expected income, just like you saw on the parent side. This is required, but as I said earlier, unless you know for sure your child is going to make a certain amount of money, you should put 0, because even if you want your child to work, say they get to school, they struggle, and you decide that you're going to postpone that, you don't want to project income that you don't know for certain is going to happen. So I've got 0s for all of those because they are required. Then this question is the first, almost every parent, if you've gotten a little bored, kind of slap your face here and perk up, because this question I want to talk through. How much does PEG, which is the student, expect to receive from the following sources for the 23-24 year? And the first one is, how much will the parents contribute? Well, first of all, this is the custodial parent, because this is a divorced family. If it's not a divorced family, then they're saying the parents in general. It's okay to put a number here, right? If you have a 529 and there's $20,000 in it, you divide it by 4 and put 5,000 a year. This question the answer to this question cannot help you, but it can absolutely hurt you. You don't want to put a higher number than your expected family contribution. So hopefully you have estimates of your EFCs so you don't do that inadvertently, because the college will just bump up what they think you can afford. So just like everything here, you want to be honest, but you don't want to overestimate. And for some families, you might not be able to afford to put anything toward it. You might not have savings, and you might be making it every month with your income. You don't have a lot of extra money, and you don't have outside people willing to help. So if that's the case, put 0. If you can afford $1,000 for a year, put it down. Be honest here. Don't put a higher number because you wish it was higher or you're embarrassed, because that could hurt you in the financial aid package you get. If the student knows they're going to get any grants and scholarships, go ahead and put it in. If an employer, if this is only if for certain there's certain benefits coming into the family. And then this last one, relatives other than the parents that are going to help. Only put this if grandma has said with 100% certainty, I'm going to kick in $5,000. I'm going to kick in $10,000. Go ahead and put it. But if it's, we'll see where they get in and what kind of money the gap is, I would put 0, because if you don't have a firm commitment there, that can hurt your package. And then if you don't get that help from grandma, then you've received less from the college, and that's going to sting. So that's how I recommend filling out that page. Now we're into the student asset. So here, this question is not required. If you don't click these, then it obviously will move on. These are part of the formula. So I'm going to click them because I want you to see what the upshot is. When you click those, then you get some required questions, checking and savings, just like you've seen for the parents. Then since you said you had investments, which most kids don't, they usually don't have a stock portfolio, but whatever that is, you can put that here, okay? And then if the student is a beneficiary of a trust, they give you some information here. but you put 0. And remember, 529s owned by the parent are the parent investment, not the student investment. So please remember that, okay? All right, so let's keep going. If you said you had a trust, these are required questions. So is any of the income currently available? I love that question, actually, because in a lot of trusts, the student can't access it till 30. So if that's the case, mark no, right? And then they ask who established the trust. So if it's grandma and grandpa, that's other. Otherwise, it's the parents. And then what type of trust? If you don't know, you got to go find out what type of trust it is. By the way, this is an appeal item, right? You can always appeal this depending on what it says in the trust. No, I need to pick something to go forward. Okay, there we go. And I need to say no. So those are required, so it doesn't let you go forward. Does the student have any retirement assets? They're not going to include them, and it's not required. So I wouldn't mark yes or no, even if they did. So we're almost at the end here. Special circumstances. This is a place where people can kind of share their case, share what would be an appeal. We recommend you mark none, and then you wait, get in, get that financial aid award letter, and then you will absolutely share this, but you will appeal in the correct way and on your terms, not disclosing it in the CSS profile. So that is our advice from College Aid Pro. This last section is called supplemental questions. So you may see this and you may not. There's an extra bank of questions that specific schools can say, hey, I want you to include question 2 and question 11, and I want to see those answers. So some of the schools that I plugged in actually do have supplemental questions they require, but you notice they're not required by the CSS profile. So again, my advice is to leave them off, okay? And then basically it takes you back to the home page. You will want to review this. When you hit review my application, you can't create a really nice PDF and look at it. You're going to have to go section by section, but you also may get something here that's what we call a data check. And you might have forgotten something that they want you to go back and do. But if you don't include the social security number, this is a tough one because the social security number on the CSS profile is not required. And so I usually don't share social security numbers when they're not required in any part of my life, just because there's so much hacking that goes on and identity theft that you try and make your life a little easier and maybe avoid that. The issue is there are some colleges that match your CSS profile with the social security number, and that's how they track it. So if they don't see that, they receive your CSS profile, but it might be in a little bit of like a limbo land where it's not attached. So if you decide to include it, then you know the few schools that do that, you won't have that issue. If you decide not to include it, then you and the schools are saying, hey, we didn't get your CSS, or maybe confirm with the schools that they have it. They say they don't, it might be because of that. So if you decide not to include the social security number for yourself and your child, it'll be linked to your child's most likely, then just kind of jot that down, that you might have that as an extra step, or especially if a school's saying they haven't received it, and you want to make sure that they know they got it by the school's deadline. So don't be worried if you get a data check, just follow through whatever it says. So this is kind of going through and looking at everything you put in, but it's by section, and you save and continue. So you can't produce a nice little PDF. Then once you go through the application, then you will be able to submit, and there you're going to see a page that has all the schools and all the costs listed. And I'm going to go ahead here and stop my share. So when you get to the end, you will know you're at the end because they're going to ask for payment, and you'll see all the schools. You'll see the $9 fee unless your fee was waived. And if it was waived, then you won't see that, right? And you'll be good to go. You pull out that credit card and you make that payment, and then the CSS profile will be sent to all the schools that you requested. I have been told by College Board that you will be able to make one correction one time. That was started last year. I don't see it on my dashboard, but I don't think it pops up until you've submitted the CSS. And obviously, I'm not submitting my sample family. So just keep that in mind. If you do make an error, you can do a one-time correction submission. But I would be, pretty sure you got everything dialed in. But if you don't worry about it. You can go back. Make sure you've got all your CSS schools lined up. You can always send it to another school after the fact if you need to. It's just then you get into paper and it's not electronically done. So make sure you got the list pretty firm. If one pops up later and you got to send it, it's not the end of the world, but much easier for you to get it done. And then just remember that after you submit this, you are going to hear from the colleges. So look at your email. Your child needs to watch their email that's in the CSS profile. You might be reached out by a company called IDOC. That's a third party. It's legit. And they're going to ask you to securely upload your tax information. So that's the next part of this process with the CSS profile schools. Or the college might be reaching out directly. So that's the CSS profile. Hopefully this will help you get through it much faster, with less stress. And then once you get that submitted along with the FAFSA, then you will be done with this step of the process. One day at a time with this process. So as always, happy planning.